So today we're going to talk about Ashlesha Nakshatra, and taking our cue from the last video, I'm guessing we're going to talk about Ashlesha a little bit and then get into the transit of Mercury going through it. And if you have Mercury and Ashlesha in your natal charts, this video will also apply because we're talking about the signification and what happens when Mercury is in this nakshatra. Hi, Jay.
Hi. So
How are
I
you?
have a question.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm okay. How are you?
Good.
All well, dealing with the sun.
Yeah.
What if you don't have Mercury, but you have another planet? So basically, you'll still be affected.
Yes, any planet, if you have ascendant, sun, moon, or any other planet, you're dealing with that field of interaction. So whatever the planet significations are, it's going to have a certain feel. We'll probably end up talking about other planets too, like the last one we did, the transit of Saturn in Purva Bhadrapada. We ended up talking about all the planets, but the focal point eventually is to get into what does Mercury mean in this nakshatra. And it's kind of interesting because the Vimshotri Dasha connected to the Ashlesha Nakshatra is also Mercury. So they have this affinity anyway. So it's a relevant video on more than one level.
So I guess we can start with what is Ashlesha?
I'm going to start most of the nakshatra videos by saying the degrees in both the sidereal degrees in the zodiac and the tropical, because I don't want people who look at the tropical zodiac to think the degrees that apply to the sidereal zodiac apply in the tropical. You're looking at a wrong field of interaction if you do that. So in the sidereal zodiac, the degrees where Ashlesha falls in is 16 degrees and 40 minutes of Cancer to 30 degrees and 0 minutes in Cancer. But if you go to the tropical zodiac, you have to look at the degrees from 10 degrees and 47 minutes of Leo to 24 and 6 minutes of Leo. So this is very important to make that distinction. So
they're completely different.
Yes, 23 degrees different apart.
Yeah. And then with Ashlesha, so in this case, in the sidereal, it falls into Cancer.
Yeah, it falls into Cancer. All of it is in Cancer. And then when you take it to the tropical, it's falling into midway in Leo.
And then so in these texts, all of these nakshatras have their story, their background, everything is talked about in the text?
Yes, but it's all scattered and it's bits and pieces. And you do have to know the Vedic texts outside the context of astrology also to understand these nakshatras, especially the deities. Why are they bringing certain qualities into a nakshatra? Why do they have certain interpretations? Which the ones that are pertaining to astrology, strictly to astrology, they don't always give you elaborate explanation. And I think some parts of the reason for that is that back in the day, it was assumed that a lot of it was known knowledge. You should know about the deities. Like, what's wrong with you if you don't get it? If they're talking about the Nagas, like the deity related to Ashlesha, you should know what it's about. So they don't get into explicit details about the qualities, the way we talk about them, let's say on this video. So you have to expand your realm of horizon in terms of learning this tradition, learning about the deities, which goes outside of the astrological text.
So all the deities, symbolism, the story behind it, everything is almost interpreted from studying it all.
Right. Like, for example, when we are going to talk about Ashlesha today, where the deity is the Nagas in this, you can go to the Mahabharata and then they're talking about it there. So you learn some stuff there, and then you go to the Puranas and some of them are there. So you have to start to familiarize yourself with how they're described and what their attributes are outside the texts that are strictly about astrology.
Okay, so then what you've studied, how are they described? How would you say, like, it's the Nagas, but is there a story behind it?
There are plenty of stories about the Nagas, right? Because the Nagas are essentially talking about the Asuras. And when you look at so many of the texts, we're talking about almost two camps, the Devas versus the Asuras in so many of the narratives. Even Rahu and Ketus for Banu, they're Asuras. They're part of this whole Naga group of entities. So the more we learn about how they operate, what they do, like when we think about Varuna, Vitra, Indra, we're talking about the dynamic between the Devas and the Asuras, and it's telling us something about both classification of entities, devas and asuras, and what they do. But when we talk about Ashlesha, there's this connotation to Ashlesha that's about embracing. It's about wanting. It's about desiring. It's about alluring, attracting. And I've thought about this for a really long time. I'm like, well, okay, the serpent, the coiling serpent is the symbolism for this nakshatra. But where else is this coming from? And in a sense, when you look at what happens with the story of Varuna and Vitra, when Varuna into the underseas and Indra becomes the king of gods and he takes power, he basically exiles the asuras. He technically blames what was happening with them taking upas, which was the river water and the fresh water from the earth, and creating this kind of a drought. What they caused, Indra was just very unforgiving about it and kind of designated the asuras from the above, from where the devas are, and exile them. And where they go is he sends them to earth, but they're not on the surface of the earth. Their dwelling place, the way that it's described, is actually the seventh layer below the earth. That's where their kingdom is. And they're in an eternal war with Indra. They want to reclaim their place back. Like in the Western narrative and the Western psyche, this is like the fallen angels, has that kind of a connotation to it. And if you think about anyone who's in exile, the sense of longing in them is tremendous. Because, like, for example, even myself, when I came to Canada, we came as political refugees. It was a kind of an exile, and there was a sense of being homesick. There's a sense of wanting to go back. So even when we contemplate these stories and we sit with them, and then we see what the story of the Nagas are, the asuras, relative to the devas, and why do they behave the way they do? What is it that makes their nature to have certain qualities? We have to refer back to these narratives and contemplate, meditate on it to understand it.
This is kind of a side topic, but in Kerala,
yeah,
a lot of homes have something called a serpakav, which is an abode of the snakes.
Yes.
So in a lot of our properties, we have like a certain area where rituals are done.
Yes.
And then we're not allowed to go to that area at all, usually otherwise. And it's basically like snakes live there. So I don't know if it and you worship, like you do certain rituals for them to keep them happy, but they're never supposed to be disturbed. Right. So I don't know if it comes up in anything else, but I do know, like, we have that problem. Like they say, like one of our relatives, tore down the house to make a development, for example. Mm-hmm. And there was this snake abode there. And so that was destroyed. And ever since then, she's had nonstop problems.
Yeah, so a lot of narratives that you find in these texts that one should not kill serpents or snakes. It's severe karma that comes along with that.
Yeah, it is definitely. I know in Hinduism, it's definitely frowned upon and definitely bad karma to be attacking snakes.
And if you think about it, the Nagas have made their home within earth. And some of their significations, when you look at it, and some of the stories that are related to it, they have tremendous amount of wealth. And if you think about the bounty of this planet, all of it is coming from beneath the earth, like the vegetation that feeds us and feeds the animals that we eat. There's a kind of an abundance that's coming from them in some ways. So I could see in some ways, even the most surface level, to kill a serpent, which represents this, is to kill the bounty and the wealth that belongs to this planet and is generating it, which is allowing us to regenerate also.
Yeah.
We get so much of our pleasure from what comes out of the earth, whether it's food or gems and all of our building material, all the jewels belong to the Nagas that live inside the earth, right? One of the key symbols that we really have to explore about Ashlesha is this notion of embracing, coiling. That's what snakes do. They coil around each other, or if they want to, they catch something and they want to eat it, they first coil around it and tighten up before they actually eat their catch. And they need seduction for arousal. Seduction here is talking about luring something in, pulling something in. And even just from this, we can see a lot of the connotations that are attached to Ashlesha being seductive, being passionate, and being sexual. All of these things are coming from this act that's related to this nakshatra.
What's the word? You know, like in Egyptian, like back in the day in mythology,
Mhm.
like whether it's Greek or whatever, that Cleopatra type of person.
Right.
Is that kind of, you know?
Yeah, they have an allure about them. There's an
Yeah.
attractive and attracting quality. For example, Ashlesha is often talked about having mystical and magical power. What is that? It is the power to attract and lure people and things towards themselves. There's that concept of it. And yeah, when we think about Cleopatra, even though historically they say she was not the most attractive person, she definitely historically, her narrative has this pull.
Well, that's my point. She wasn't actually, some people debate, like say whether she was actually physically attractive, but she was able to just draw two of the strongest, you know, powerful people in, and clearly, you know.
And you know, when you think about it, when someone attracts us, when they're pulling us, they're enticing us. There's an arousal that's happening with it. So another thing about the mystical and the magical aspect, because of their ability to do that, they create a kind of an arousal, a kind of an enthusiasm that the other person feels within themselves too. And when we look at the word seduction, which is very much connected to this nakshatra, to seduce someone is to pull them in. However, the one who's being pulled in, they might have another path. So they're being strayed off their own path. So this nakshatra starts to get this negative connotation from the perceiver's perspective. Because while, let's say, the Ashlesha native is getting what they want or who they want, the who that they're getting, it might be straying that person away from where they were going. When we talk about seducing someone, like let's say someone who's married and they're being seduced, they're being led astray from, let's say, their spouse or their partner. They're getting lured into this other dynamic. So we can see how this nakshatra starts to get the more negative connotations externally, but for the native, they just have this power that they can attract and get and coil and take in.
So Marilyn Monroe would be another person. She, what you just said, right? Like attracting married men, like not just married men, anyone, right? She just had this, I mean, she was also beautiful. Like she, compared to maybe for that time or whatever, but I would think just the way you described it, like the other person, for example, may be married or may be committed or maybe something or has to work or whatever. But she was able to draw in all these famous, powerful, political people.
It does have those kinds of a quality. And this nakshatra has passion in it, right? It wants to coil and it wants to intertwine itself with someone else. She did that. She did have even it's been half a century past. And she still, even through the camera, her presence has that alluring, enticing, pull in, attracting factor to her. Yes, definitely. The way she talked and the way she used her mouth and all of her gestures. Yeah.
Yeah, because honestly, just the way you described it, I was like, oh, that totally reminds me of, Cleopatra or Marilyn Monroe or somebody who's able to, like, they have a power in that, right?
Yeah.
Because they're able to bring people in. Like Cleopatra, like you said, they say she wasn't even physically attractive, really, but she still was able to draw people in. Okay, so basically it's like a seduction. It's like but is it a malicious intent?
Look, we like to have desires, but we like to shun other people who have desires. So I was saying passion is connected with this nakshatra, and passion is about having deep, intense desires, longing and wanting. And I said it at the beginning. I mean, if we think about it, the asuras, the Nagas are in kind of a state of exile. So naturally, you're going to have strong desires that are going to connect to all kinds of desires. The passion here is super intense. It's a negative for a person who has these desires and wants to pull in, or that seductive aspect of it where someone else is being strayed from their path because this person wants to meet their desire, then that's when the negative connotation comes
No,
in.
because honestly, like the way and everything I've read about it, you know, the whole even snakes are charm. That's why where they're the term snake charmer comes from, right?
Yeah.
Snake salesman or oil, like, isn't it that whole like deceitful? When you think of snakes, and if Ashlesha has to do with that, I'm assuming anyone with a prominent moon or any Mercury, anything.
Yeah.
But then with a I know we're jumping. I shouldn't jump,
That's
but I was
okay.
going to say,
No. Let's just have a free flow conversation.
okay, with a Mercury there, that's your intelligence. That's your
intellect.
So is it intellect? So that could be even more deceitful.
Ashlesha, when it's operating too intensely, and maybe we can even call it a bit dysfunctional out in the world, because now you're going to get a reaction from the world. It can lean towards deceit and deceitfulness. And the reason, look, if I want something, I'm trying to attract you to my idea, to what I want. I want you to see me. I want you to be attracted to me. I want to create that allure. I might take it to the oomph degree and start using my power of persuasion on you. And then I'm selling you snake oil. And then I am fudging things a little too much. And then I am over exaggerating because I have intensity also. So yes, the intellect here, even Ashlesha without Mercury, can have the slant in it, because it has these deep desires that it wants to meet it, and sometimes by any means necessary, because it is so passionate about that, and it's so longing to intertwine with what it is that it desires, that yes, the objective might not be to go down the path of truthfulness and honesty and being upright, because it might not get you what you want. And then you put Mercury here, which has to do with communication and the intellect. So you can get that notion of being persuasive in a way that you're cunning, persuasive in a way that you're bending the truth and you're not being honest anymore, and there's dishonesty. So yeah, you can definitely get this in this nakshatra.
But then what are some positive traits of Ashlesha in general and Mercury in Ashlesha?
Let's say you have the passion, you have the desire, you have that longing, you have this need to connect, and not just connect, because this whole coiling is about like too much, like this nakshatra, going back to the negative for a second, the coiling of the snake is meant to suffocate its prey, to kill it and to weaken it, to control it in order to consume it. It's actually trying to take it in. It's not just playing with it. So when you get the negative connotations of this nakshatra, you get jealousy, you get possessiveness, you get power dynamics where the person wants to control. They almost trying to consume the other person in terms of having their desires met. However, let's say we can moderate ourselves in this very act, and you're in a relationship dynamic. This is where its positive connotation comes in, because if you are the beloved, you want your lover to hold you, to show affection, to show passion, to stay with you, to have that embrace and to always hold you, forever held, forever loved with passion, and to have passionate sex. So all of a sudden, Ashlesha, when it can moderate itself, it can be one of the best lovers and partners in terms of its qualities. But when it becomes dysfunctional, it's suffocating. It's trying to consume you and it's trying to control you. So that's not good.
Is the planet that rules Ashlesha Mercury itself?
It doesn't rule Ashlesha. I always want to make that clear. Is the Vimshuttri dasha that awakens and triggers Ashlesha Nakshatra. And the Vimshuttri dasha is connected to Mercury. And I want you to let's think about Mercury in the context of as the Vimshuttri ruler and in Ashlesha Nakshatra. What is the function of Mercury? Mercury creates nexus and relationship. So if we say Venus is that which creates the union, Mercury before it has to bring point A and B into relation to close that gap of distance. Now, if the snake wants to coil, if the snake's here and the object of his desire is this far away, Mercury will allow the relational dynamic to happen, to close the gap and the distance, to surpass the boundary that exists between them, to become close enough so not that the snake can wrap, embrace, and coil. So Mercury is making Ashlesha Nakshatra functional because of its own inherent quality, which is to bring things into relation. Like Mercury has to do with friendships. Communication is a two-way channel of communication where two people can talk and then connect through that communicative aspect. So an Ashlesha Nakshatra, to close that distance and that gap between itself and the object of his desire, Mercury allows it to do that. Mercury gives it the intellect to be able to read the other person. What do I have in common with them? How can I be their friends? How can I get close so that it's able to do these?
Okay, so having a Mercury sitting here or having it transit here could be a really good thing for business, for friendships, for fostering relationships, or
yes, as long as it doesn't get into the cunning part and that persuading at any cost to get its desires.
A diplomat, somebody in world, like if we're looking at world politics, right? Yes. Somebody who is a very exceptional diplomat person probably would have a good placement. Like Mercury is communication, sitting as Ashlesha.
And Mercury is also a diplomat.
Oh, okay, there you go. Okay, so there are a lot of people, like somebody with this placement or transiting, like you said, they would be able to kind of find like there's always, you know, everybody would think when they hear snake, they think negative. Mm-hmm. But also there would probably, you know, you could prevent wars, you can prevent lots of things by your ability to speak and draw people in to hear, like listen to what you're saying.
Yes, because they have a particular charisma and charm about them too, in Ashlesha, right? That's part of the allure, and that's part of their magic. So yes, and then if the words behind the charisma and the charm is geared towards some greater purpose, then yes. As an example, we can think about this. Shesha, which is the serpent that's always with Vishnu, right? Mm-hmm. He has a devotional. He's coiling Vishnu. I mean, avatars, incarnations of Vishnu, Shesha is also incarnating, and he's in that narrative with Vishnu. There's a devotional component of Shesha. He's also a Naga. He's a serpent. And he's there. And Ashlesha Nakshatra too, at its best, it can have this devotional aspect to it. And let's say you are a politician, the example that you use, and you are devoted to a cause, and you have also those other qualities of Ashlesha, which is charm and charisma and be able to attract people. And you're attracting their attention now to something worthy, and you're able to express why this is a worthy desire, then yeah, that's a great quality, is it not?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. No.
That's powerful.
Yeah, they're able to use, like, that's why I guess in the beginning when I was talking about like people like Marilyn Monroe and stuff, they had a beauty as well. But there's a lot of people, they might not be beauty, it might not be external, but there's something about them where they can draw them in. And somebody, exactly like I was trying to say, diplomats or politicians, they're able to convince people or, you know, like you said, for a cause or stop wars or anything like that. Like most people, when they hear Ashlesha, it's like snakes and negative. Yeah, you're the snake charmer. But that's why I was trying to say, like in a positive light, there's also a lot of positive. Like there could be, like from career wise or otherwise. Like so, somebody had this in the 7th house. That would be a very difficult marriage. I take it.
Again, to go back to that coiling, which is talking about the embrace and
devotion,
you know, then it's probably the best thing that could happen to a human being. But if you are there and you are desiring other people and other people's partners and or constantly looking at your spouse or partner and thinking they want to be with someone else, and then it's creating that all of those negative feelings, it can expound in this nakshatra. It can become super overwhelming. And then this nakshatra, if it has a desire for someone else, is not a benign nakshatra. So the desire and that passion becomes so intense that there is a feeling that I need to act on it. So Mercury here is talking about the intellect and what happens and how we process things. So the person has to become a master of this domain of their thinking to be able to control, not to stray off. but likely Mercury being related to this nakshatra and the Mercury transit, hopefully someone has a power of discernment here and they're able to say, okay, no, I can see, I'm not going to go that way. It's giving the person the power of discernment not to, but will it go that way? I don't know.
But everybody who's going through this transit, they're going to have to look at what house it falls in.
Of course.
And so everybody will be different. Like we were talking, I guess, about relationships and things like that.
Yeah.
But it could be in business, or it could be
10th house,
in your career. Yeah.
4th house within your family, and the aspects and the conjunctions and the entire dynamic of the chart. But just as a raw interpretation, that's what we're saying.
But Mercury in general would be comfortable here, though.
Let's say you have Mercury here. It can make someone a persuasive speaker. They know how to use their words and verbally how to attract other people to them. They know how to verbally seduce other people. So it has these kinds of meaning to it.
Okay, whereas if you had a Venus, it would be more physical rather than verbal and intellectual.
You put Venus here and Mars. They're both very passionate planets. So it's good. The thumbs up. I still don't know how to turn it off. So you get the extra charisma, you get the extra passion. And this could be good, or this could really go haywire too. Mars, that's too passionate. You might have someone who has commitment issues. They're kind of promiscuous. You know, Venus could also indicate that to a certain degree here too, because it can start to take that notion of indulgence and too much enjoyment, and this nakshatra really wants to enjoy what it desires. It wants it so much because it wants to enjoy it.
With Mercury, though, could it be because a lot of people think Venus is physical beauty, and I could it also be like, how some people are like, I'm attracted to their mind.
Yes.
Like to their intellect. A lot of people find intellect attractive, right? And how a person speaks, or how a person, presents themselves, not just physically, but mentally.
Yeah. I was going to actually leave this for, I thought maybe we talk about it later, but it's coming up. Okay, so you put Mercury in Ashlesha. One of the qualities that you can get out of here is adaptability, which makes a person a kind of a chameleon. So one of the things that they're going to do to lure other people, they're going to shapeshift. They're going to become you. The way that you speak, suddenly they speak like you. They walk like you. They act like you. But why are they doing this? Because they're trying to create that relatability and the connection. Mercury is very good at doing this in general. I mean, the sign of Gemini has a bad rep because they call it as two-faced. It's not that it's two-faced. It just has this adaptability in it. And the sign of Ashlesha, the serpents, are also in their narratives are known. They're described as shape-shifting. They can take the shape of other forms, like inanimate objects or other entities. So when you put Mercury here with that quality also in it, so you do get this chameleon quality where the person can shift and become a chameleon. They're creating relatability. And one of the things that you get with this nakshatra, when they're interacting with people, the person's like, I'm so drawn into you because I just feel like we're so much alike. That is something that attracts people. When people fall in love, especially when you're younger, one of the things that really captures your imagination is like, we're so alike. I don't know who the hell in this world wants someone like themselves, but when you're young, you think that's a good thing. Like, I don't want to be in a relationship, like two of me, no thanks. I'm still trying to deal with the one. But this creates an allure. So one of the ways to build immunity to Ashlesha natives who do this, if you're in contact with them and they have a tendency to do this, is to become impervious to compliments. They're very good at complimenting. They're very good at creating relatability when Mercury is in this nakshatra. They become adaptable. They can adapt to other people's way as their own. And to actually not fall for this is to not be flattered by the compliment. And the thing is, Ashlesha Nakshatra, if it becomes this passionate about you, it can spit its poison. It can bite and it can hurt. And the way that it does that, it will take that compliment that once upon a time had given you and turn it on its head and use it as something that's very poisonous. So if you were immune to the compliments, then you're also immune to the poison. So Mercury here has this, and it augments this quality in this nakshatra, because the nakshatra has this quality and Mercury has this quality. So adaptability and shiftiness and chameleon-like behavior.
So anyone, even with a transit, they'll just have that, because I mean, Mercury is a pretty quick transit.
Yeah, Mercury's transits through Ashlesha in 2024 is from July 8th to July 19th. That's just 11 days. That's it.
Okay, so in 11 days, but somebody with this actual placement in their chart. Yeah.
It's forever.
So the actual transit itself, I mean, it'll have minimal impact.
Yes.
I guess it depends where it falls in your chart.
Exactly. You might meet someone, for example, right? Let's say it's happening in your 5th house of romance, and you're just having fun. And you might find yourself inclined to shift a little bit and adapt to the other person. Is where you go on a date, and instead of being yourself, you find yourself being more of them. So it compels, right? The transits compel in that sense. So yeah, depends which house.
What about the eighth house?
8th house is a very sexual house.
I know, that's why I asked.
Right? And then Ashlesha Nakshatra has that connection to sexuality and passion. So yeah, you might find yourself being what is it called? Don Juan, Don Juan, Don Juan.
Yeah. Yeah.
Trying to get someone to, for the intercourse of it. This nakshatra is related to intercourse, because the way they try to embrace the meaning connected to the embrace of the serpent in this nakshatra is not a hug. It's not the way that you see your friend just like hug you like this. It wants to penetrate. It wants to take you in. It wants to consume you. It wants to go in. So yeah, it's not a.
You may want to not put all of that in there in your life. Okay. I mean, I don't have it in the 8th house, by the way. FYI, it's not about me. Just so you know, it's not about me. I was just trying to throw out other houses, because I'm sure a lot of people watching it.
And 8th house is a great example.
Because I think you already talked about 7th, 5th, 8th.
Yes.
What about the 1st?
In the 1st house, you want to attract people to your person, to who you are. Look at me. Look at what I have. Look at who I am. So it's creating, and it can be a very charming and charismatic human being, because it wants that. It wants to connect itself and to coil around the other, the 7th house, in order to have that sense about itself. So in the 1st house is a house of the self, is about your identity, is about things of that nature.
Okay. And in the 12th?
It's going to start taking that notion of devotion to have that sense of satisfaction, because the 12th house is an abstract house devoid of material things. And this is a very material oriented nakshatra. I mean, all the desires, all the passions, wanting to coil and wanting to embrace. What is there to embrace in the 12th house? There's just
God.
Of spirituality. Yes. Yeah. So, I mean, the way to embrace with God is devotional, right? So you become Shesha-like in that sense. You are devoted. So yeah, Ashlesha in the 12th house will take on that kind of a meaning. And Mercury is about, one of the significations of Mercury and the intellect, the function of intellect is to constantly differentiate. This is this is that, this is not that, therefore it is that. Because it is that, then I want that. In the 12th house, there is nothing to differentiate. What is Mercury going to do in the 12th house? Again, it becomes a one-way communication. So again, it's talking to God, as being devotional.
To the higher self. Yeah. So would moon be beauty or face?
Look, moon itself is also, again, everyone thinks Venus is the most desirous planet. Moon is the most desirous planet. Why? Because the moon has to do with your subjectivity. It has to do with your opinions. And what the moon wants is comfort and dependency. Now you take that notion of Ashlesha wanting to embrace and to take in the desire aspect of it. And moon is receptive, and this nakshatra has an attractive pulling in quality also, so it can exponentially make these meanings more intense when the moon is there. And the moon represents the mind, so a desirous mind. Like moon in the regular zodiac is exalted in Taurus. Why? Because the moon has its desires met. So finally, it can go through its fluctuations without feeling like it has a lack or a gap. It feels secure and stable. In this nakshatra, because there's desire, every time we have a desire is denoting something's lacking within us. So you can get jealousy and envy here. You can get not feeling secure, feeling a sense of insecurity, because just by the virtue that the nakshatra has these qualities is saying that the person's grappling with some missing links on the inside. And since it's a wealth-oriented nakshatra and is a materially oriented nakshatra and is looking for it out in the world. So yeah, there could be, when you put the moon here, it can become desirous, searching, feeling those insecurities, extra looking, becoming dependent on other people, becoming possessive here, but at the same time endowing one with great charm. Soma is very, very charming in this tradition and the narratives about Chandra or Soma. I mean, for crying out loud, all the nakshatras are his wives, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's true. But if you had a Mercury then transiting over your natal moon,
yeah,
I'm sure a lot of people with natal moon, because a lot of people, like I said, in India, that's the most common thing. Where's your moon placed?
yeah,
And based on that,
Yeah.
certain rituals are done or things are done.
yeah. But I said that in the other videos too. When you're looking at your natal moon in terms of which nakshatra is permanently sitting in, because that's what it is in your natal chart, it's also saying something about your makeup, because the moon represents the mind and the body, right? So it's saying something about the kind of consciousness that's contained within this mind-body apparatus that is the person. And when it is in Ashlesha, that means they're embodying those Ashlesha qualities in mind and body.
Which is crazy. Marilyn Monroe, her lagna,
Yeah.
moon is sitting right there in Ashlesha.
Wow. So body, self, identity, mind, everything.
Well, she's famous for her curves, right?
Yeah.
Her body is able, she didn't even have to open her mouth half the time. People were seduced just by the way she looked. And I mean, her hair was not her original hair color and all that, but her name's not even whatever, but.
Yes. And Marilyn's known that in private, she did not behave the way she does in public, right? So that chameleon quality, she would become a sex goddess in her public life. And then there are a lot of reports, stories, people who've interacted with her. She was quiet. She was shy, very smart, while her public persona was exactly how people imagine what sexiness was. She embodied that and she enacted that, as you get these kinds of feel in this nakshatra.
Well, Saturn there, a lot of people also, the generalized thought is that's your karma, right?
Yeah.
So it could also be looked, so Saturn sitting there.
Yeah. Saturn represents your past and time. Karma and time have a lot to do with each other, right? Yeah. The problem with Saturn in Ashlesha is that this is a very passionate, desiring, enthusiastic, wanting to create movement, passion for Saturn, desire for Saturn. Saturn's logical and cold and analytical, so when you put Saturn in this nakshatra, it brings a sense of dispassion, disconnection. So it doesn't do what Ashlesha wants to do. So it hinders its modes and ways of being. Sun will also do the same thing. So when you put the sun is like mature masculinity, it's not, and the sun is about truth, is the illumination, is it's not going to do all this song and dance to lure someone in. The sun is regular, is predictable. It's going to say, this is point A, B. This is what I got. This is who I am. See me, take me as I am. But you put like a Mercury in Ashlesha, it'll do a whole song and dance for you that's very appealing to you to like lure you in. Sun is not going to do that, and Saturn, forget about it. Saturn is just like, I don't even want to be with you.
He's definitely no peacock, I guess.
No, it's yeah, when it's like Mars is passionate. The Saturn is not about passion. It's about dispassion and objectivity. I mean, people say Ashlesha Nakshatra is very intelligent. Intelligent, not in an objective way, because we're talking about everything that we talked about right now. Like even passion and objectivity don't really go together. When you put Saturn here, Saturn brings that. So yeah, the intelligence of Ashlesha is being able to, for example, read the room really well, know what it wants, and then know how to create the environments to be able to shine and to get what it wants and to get energized, or to even energize other people, to turn that charisma dial up. Yeah, but Saturn in general brings insensitivity to a nakshatra that it's constantly trying to create a sensitive point. That's where the charisma of this nakshatra is a lot of time.
Well, isn't it also going to just restrict all of that? Like no obsession, no charisma, no charm.
Saturn, I don't know about Saturn being charming. Yeah, no. Like imagine this nakshatra has something to do with flirting. You know?
Yeah.
There's nothing worse than like someone flirting with you and you just cut him off and you're like, are you trying to flirt with me? Because that's not cute. That would be Saturn.
Ouch.
That's not gonna work.
I think you've gone through all the planets, right?
Yeah, and another thing with Saturn's very logical and rational, you know? So it can talk you out of why you shouldn't have intercourse with it.
Well, I'm guessing it'll also talk you not to have an affair.
Yeah, and Saturn creates insecurities where we end up worrying. So you could get feelings of being worried about not being charismatic enough, not being attractive enough, not being sexual enough, not being enough. So Saturn can take all those significations of Ashlesha and turn it on its head to make the person doubt about, because those are the powers of Ashlesha, to be able to attract and embrace and seduce. So you will feel impotent when Saturn's sitting there. Like, I don't have these powers.
Sun has a lot to do with ego. So is it also like, I'm just too good for this?
It could, right? You start to get that kind of a slant. Sun has to do with ego. When you look at narcissism in a birth chart, we're talking about the sun because we're talking about a self-concept here too. But generally, the signification of the sun in this nakshatra is it dials down these, like being a chameleon and all of those aspects of it. But sun has to do with authority. So, and this nakshatra has to do with power dynamics and control. So you put the sun here, it could turn the dial up on that. You get someone who's very controlling because they are possessive and they want to possess that person or that thing. So you could get these kinds of meaning out of it too. All right, so this was our discussion about Ashlesha Nakshatra and specifically Mercury in it. And it applies at this moment in time because Mercury is transiting through Ashlesha. I don't know which video we'll be covering next. I know we're going to do the transit of Punarvasu because the sun's going to go through it. That's a very interesting one. And we're going to continue with the Nakshatra series and do Barney eventually, but that's all I know right now.
Yeah, looking forward to the Nakshatra series. I'm sure a lot of people are because there's so much you can learn from all of them, no matter what placement you have there.
Very true. Very true. It teaches you about life. There's life lesson in every single one of them. So we'll wrap up this video here. Thank you so much for helping me.
Yeah, looking forward to the next one.
Me too. That's it for today. Much love. Till next time.